So Nancy, can you hear us okay? Okay, cool. All right. So then now let's get started. We usually start with a brief introduction of the Chinese Coffee Club. So we'll do that for, we'll take a couple minutes just to do that, and then we'll officially start today's event. My name is Robert Liu. I'm the host for the U.S.-China Cultural Forum. We are part of this Chinese Coffee Club. I'm sure for many of you guys, you are old friends of our Chinese Coffee Club. But for some of you, this may be the first time you participate in our events. So just a brief introduction here. So Chinese Coffee Club is a New York nonprofit organization, and we provide professional lectures and conferences for the Chinese community, and promote collaboration and alliance among Chinese organizations. So we have a sister organization called Wisdom Academy. The Wisdom Academy is also founded by the same founding team of Chinese Coffee Club, headed by Angeline Huang. So if you are new to our organization, please feel free to scan the QR code and add our WeChat. Again, this is the U.S.-China Cultural Exchange, or U.S.-China Cultural Seminar. And this is our fourth event. In the previous three events, we talk about the clothing culture and the costume culture, appropriate dressing. We also talk about Spring Festival, and this is our fourth event. So our goal through this U.S.-China Cultural Seminar is to promote, is to help Chinese Americans enhance their understanding of both American culture and Chinese culture, and to help you achieve greater success. So before we get started today, I would like to do a little bit advertising for our next events. So tomorrow we're going to have another event for career development. We'll have Patrick Liao as our guest, and then on April the 3rd, we're going to have another seminar on data science. Then on April the 4th, we'll have our old friend, Tang Li, to talk about US stock market. Okay, so that's the opening. Now let's come back to our theme for tonight. So our theme for tonight is the American journey of Chinese immigrants. We are very fortunate and lucky to have our guest for tonight, Nancy Yao, with us. Nancy Yao is the current president of Museum of Chinese in America, located near Chinatown in Manhattan. She is the former executive director of the Yale China Association. She was also a former director of policy research at Goldman Sachs, and also a vice president in the investment banking division at Goldman Sachs. Nancy has over 20 years of leadership and research experience on Chinese Americans. She has an MBA from Yale School of Management, and also she went to Occidental College in California. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. I'm looking at the chat. 中文不好吗?
Okay.
对，我的中文说的不好。Maybe they're talking about you, Robert. But
All right. So yeah, I have to apologize that today we're probably going to do a mix of Chinese and English. So this is with respect to the choice of Chinese and English, I would say it's really whichever language you feel most comfortable. Because Nancy is our guest for tonight, so maybe we'll just defer to her for tonight. I would say for our participants, you should feel free to speak whatever language you feel most comfortable. Nancy, when Angeline and I were first year student at Yale School of Management, we had our class called Careers. And I think we had you as our guest speaker. We watched a video recording of your talking about your career from Goldman Sachs and at the Yale China Club. So maybe you can get started by just introducing yourself a little bit more to our audience and talk about how you transitioned from a career at Goldman Sachs in investment banking to Yale China Association and now to the Museum of Chinese in America.
sure. I'm entertained by the chat. I speak Chinese, but I was born here. I always joke that I was born in a small Chinese city called Flushing. So my family was actually maybe the second family of Chinese ancestry in Flushing. And many of you might know Flushing is yeah, I'm just sharing it for fun. Flushing is predominantly Asian ancestry now. But you're right. You were saying, Robert, about just the career trajectory and
right. Well, yeah, maybe you can start with your Chinese, your Chinese heritage. How your family, came from China to the U.S. And then how your career trajectory. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks. First, I just want to say thank you to join in, and I'm wondering also if Andrew Yang's 用中文跟你们解释 or he was speaking English. As long as my Mandarin is better than Andrew, then I feel okay. I think my math is also better than Andrew's, but I'm not sure. But 真的很高兴跟你们一块今天晚上就是好好的 very honestly 老实说 like what our background is and where we've come from. Just to give you context, I'm now the president of the Museum of Chinese in America, and my passion is to know each and every one of you and what your identity is, not what you are collectively, but who Melissa is, who Brenda is, who Xiaozong is, who Jiadong is. I am in the job and in the business of being nosy about your individual journey. And just to give you 1 minute about mine is my father, Shanghainese, 我爸在上海出生的, and my mother was born in Chongqing and Sichuan. And my father's 92. So he came, he came to, his uncle was someone you may be familiar with in Chinese history. His name, Xing Pan Gongzan. So he was in the Shanghai municipal government, who was a journalist who helped create the newspaper Sinbao. And
I see.
Yeah, so he gave me my name. My Chinese name is Yao Nanxun, Nanfeng the Nanxun, Feng the Xun. And my father left in 1947 and went to Hong Kong, and then he went to Taiwan for a few years and then came to the United States. In Shanghai, he learned some English, but he was raised by his mother only because his father passed away when he was quite young. And then as Chinese culture, usually the uncle, so his uncle was Uncle Pan Gongzan, and so he raised him pretty much. So, and then my mother was Sichuan, and then they did go to Taiwan in 1949. So many people, she considers herself Weissian in Taiwan. and their marriage was arranged by friends. They're 14 years apart. And so she came from Taiwan to New York to, meet my father, and they were married. So they're 14 years apart. And I share some detail about that because there are many stories like that in the New York City area from the 1960s and 70s.
Right.
So we're kind of in that collective post-Civil War Taiwan, Flushing, New York City generation. And we followed the earlier group that were already settled in Chinatown, which, Taranjie in New York City, that was predominantly from Taisan and Guangzhou. So that population was already there from the 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s. I've always connected with my Chineseness. So every summer, my father particularly worked at Feimei Hangou Pan American. I don't know if anyone knows that. Maybe some of the older people. So Pan Am was the first airline to fly across to go to Asia, and he took that job so we could fly back to Asia for free. Yeah. So 我们 always 免费 in the beginning 我们先暑假的时候就是去香港、台湾 because at that time 国内还没有开放 so we always went there, and then once China opened, we went to China every summer. So my father is the only person in his family of 5 brothers and sisters to leave China. Everybody else stayed in Shanghai, Kunming, Hangzhou, and my mother, she's one of 10 children. 9 of them went to Taiwan. 1 ended up staying. He was having a good time in Shanghai, and he didn't go with the family. And then they didn't see each other for 25 years.
Oh.
And then my mother brought all of her siblings, except for 1 that stayed in Taiwan, to the United States. And I will say, when my mother was 53 years old, I gave her a subscription to Newsweek magazine. And I said to my mom, I encouraged her, I said, maybe Ma, this year, maybe this is the 1 day longer you've been in America than you've lived in, China or Taiwan.
Oh.
Yeah. And I said, maybe you should encourage you to learn English better. Because my mother loves Chinese language so much. She was a Chinese literature major. So she still reads, traditional literature texts every day until 4 a.m.
Wow.
So she's, always wants to teach us. Every week she still gives us a lesson, either 成语 or 唐诗 or something. So 我们就是 very interesting. And yeah, they're. I think sometimes, just to share, and then I can answer another question. Yeah, Pan Am is amazing. It's important. Chatting is important. Yeah, come to the museum. It's in New York. And I want to tell you about the museum. It's so important.
Yeah, that's the next question. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So, So, okay, then what don't we, well, okay. So I have your, a profile from Goldman Sachs of your career transition. Do you want to talk for like a couple of minutes of that career transition?
Yeah, sure. My goal one day was to help 中美关系. I was always interested in U.S.-China relations. And I was at the Council on Foreign Relations, which is a think tank. And then after SOM at Yale School of Management, I did go to Goldman Sachs.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, a lot of that interest was because I had a lot of debt. I, as an immigrant here, my parents did many, many things. Pan Am my dad was an accountant, so for Pan Am, but I had so much debt just going to the United States and education here. So I wanted to do something that could help me create some freedom to do what I want to do, which was something more in the arts and cultural space. That being said, I did finance for about almost, I guess, 13 years. And Goldman Sachs, and then CIFRA. If anyone has a CFA, CIFRA is the financial risk part of the forensic accounting. that is usually part of the corporate finance section of the CFA. So I launched the Asia coverage there. So looking predominantly at Chinese banks. So at Goldman, I was in Hong Kong, and I covered Chinese banks. So was on the Bank of China team, it's only, Yinhang, and then also was in Hong Kong and went to Beijing every week. So that was the time when Chinese Banking Regulatory Commission started, CBRC.
Yep.
So a lot of the work I did was in financial institutions, and it's amazing, like really such an honor I feel for me to be able to see China's financial sector develop from that seat at Goldman in Hong Kong, but predominantly in Beijing and Shanghai and every bank, every major bank that eventually went public. None of the banks were public when I was working there, but then eventually in the 10-year period, all those banks did go public. And I launched the banks coverage for CFRA. So it's, really interesting. I mean, I think my interest has always been the modern contemporary development of China's economy and U.S.-China relations. So that's kind of what I'm doing at MoCA now. Some people say, why are you at a museum? It doesn't make any sense. And this little museum in Chinatown, you had a Goldman, gold card. Why don't you use it to go do hedge fund or private equity or VC or something?
Right.
And I want to be honest, I think this is one of the most important things that I can do is to create this museum, because create because we've been around for 40 years. I've been here for 6 years, but we are about to, and this is top secret to how many, 202 people, top secret, give you a secret, that we're going to create a new museum of Chinese in America.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I have some images for you if you're interested in, we can talk about that in a little bit. But most importantly, I need all of your help to make it the best museum. So this will be the National Museum of Chinese in America. So 6 years ago when I joined, Maya Lin, maybe many of you may know, I forget her aunt's name. And what is Maya Lin's aunt's name? Lin Huiying.
Yeah.
Lin Huiying. Lin Huiying, the famous architect. Her niece is Maya Lin, and some of you might know Maya Lin designed the Vietnam War Memorial. She won the competition when she was a sophomore at Yale, and she just completed the Smith Library, which was all over the Wall Street Journal and New York Times last week. So Maya Lin is designing the new MoCA, and also the most famous museum designer in the world. They also designed some museums in China and Taiwan. Ralph Applebaum Associates, RAA, they're designing the museum for us. So, Robert, if you're interested, I can show some pictures for people.
Yes, please. Yes.
Oh, okay. Let me share.
So maybe I will stop share and you can share. Yeah.
Okay. Let me show you some images, but it's top secret.
Yeah. We got insider view, right?
Yeah. Everyone, it's already kind of late. So, and it's Thursday. So how do you say happy hour in Chinese? 快乐钟.
Yeah. Wow.
I don't know.
聚会, yeah. Well.
Okay. I don't know why you guys call it coffee. You should talk it like, I don't know, margarita hour or something. If you do it so late. Okay. So top secret, let me just tell you, it's so fun. So 6 years ago, I love my job at Yale China. I don't know if some of you might know, maybe some of the Tsinghua Xiaoyou or Xiangya or Yali Zhongxue.
Yali Xianhui, yeah.
Yeah, so Yale China is a Yali Xiehui. Yali Xiehui is 120 years old, and it was the original organization to improve grassroots U.S.-China relationship. So many people know Xiangya, 呀就是雅里，湘就是湖南, right?
湖南, yeah.
So Xiangya 医学院 was started by Yale China. And now that was a hospital. So Yale China helped introduce Western medicine to China. So interesting. And it used to be a religious, a missionary, but then it turned into a secular, so just have improved U.S.-China relations. So it does that. Maybe some of you went to Yali or went to, also in Wuhan, there was a program, and also at 中文大学, 中文大学 in Hong Kong, and also in Anhui, and by Tunxi in beautiful, beautiful area. So the new MoCA. So Maya Lin called me 6 years ago and said, you have to help me with the new Museum of Chinese in America. I said, I know MoCA. I grew up in New York City. It's so cute. It's small. It's about Chinatown. And I'm not about Chinatown. I grew up in Flushing, and also Chinatown, 大部分都是广东人, right? So I said, but I'm more Mandarin speaking, my Shanghainese and Sichuan. And she was like, oh no, but we're going to make a new MoCA. You have to find a way to find a permanent home. So fast forward 6 years, I thought, and maybe everyone knows, 我们在 MoCA 有一个 joke, 我们说有一个 MoCA 速度. You know, everyone does something like nonprofits time or how not too fast. 我们都是说有 MoCA 速度. MoCA 速度是 like faster, urgent. And 因为这个很重要, 因为 today with the anti-Asian American Pacific Islander hate,
right.
That's why we have a MoCA速度, because we have to do this as quickly as possible. So if you remember anything from what I say today, the urgency to get this story, your story, into the American history is the most important thing. And that's what MoCA is about. So let me show you some images. So 我刚刚说那个 RAA, 我们就是跟那个 Maya Lin 和那个 RAA 合作。RAA is the world famous museum designer. 他们 most famous 就是那个 Holocaust Museum. You know, 关于那个 Holocaust, it's the main museum about the Holocaust. And 中间就是那个新开的那个 African American. 他们就是 design African American. So 你想想看那个 American story, the Jewish story, the African American story. Which story is so missing? 华人, Chinese in America. So 现在就是 this is the Museum of Chinese in America. This is how it looks today. And I tell you, top secret. Last week, we just go into contract to buy the building.
Wow.
We buy the entire building. 现在如果你 visit us, if anyone has, 我们只有那个一楼，就是那个 street level.
Yeah, I visited in 2019. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 14,000 square feet. It's going to be 10 times bigger. So the reason,
where is it, by the way? Can you reveal the location?
Yeah, it's same place, Soho.
Oh, same place. Okay.
It's Soho, but we bought the whole building.
Oh, wow.
So RAA, they're so famous and well known. They can do any project in the world. And actually, the exact team that did the African American is the team that does our museum.
Wow.
So they see this story as one of the fundamental stories in the museum, in this whole narrative that has to be rewritten. Because 现在如果你问 any person, you know, before pandemic, everyone knows how many international students from China. 300,000 international students every year from China.
Yeah.
And then so many of them come to our museum. And 我每次 you know, 碰他们的时候我说 okay, can you name one hero? 是华人. I'm telling you, 100% of the time, 说不出来. Not one name. And I ask any young person, nobody knows anybody. Sometimes they say Jeremy Lin, maybe, you know, but that's only because he's most recently famous. So they're designing our museum. And everyone knows Ambassador Locke. Ambassador Locke is a fundamental advisor for this. And maybe you're wondering, you know, 全美国有几个博物馆就是关于这个 history. There are 30.
Oh, wow.
But we're the biggest. And the 30, so small. We're 10 times bigger than San Francisco. So the biggest problem is there's no hub. There's no anchor. 没有一个 foundation. So no foundation for the history, no voice, right? So that's very important. So the new MoCA is going to be beautiful. So Maya Lin is designing it. Indoor space, a lot of technology, genealogy 研究中心. So 比方说, you know, Robert, say you stay here and you don't go back to, you stay here, you raise your children raise your grandchildren. And then they have no idea about their Chinese ancestry.
Right.
他们也不知道刘是哪个刘, right? They only know LIU. And you know, 刘在美国, you know how many different ways it's spelled? 10 different ways, right? And 像人字旁的武, right? NG. Cantonese, right? NG. 那个人字旁的武的 surname, 10 different ways in English it's spelled. so many different ways of spelling in the last 150 years. No connection. 今天我们都会说中文，没有问题。你们的小孩子，他们的小孩子可能有一天不会了解。So 没有一个研究中心。So this is the very important part of what we're trying to do. And then also performance space. So we can use the traditional performance, but also have new performance, integrate. Maybe 我们现在比较传统，比较喜欢看Beijing operas or whatever,
Right.
something more traditional. But 我们的小孩子他们会有一个 Chineseness, right? But it's not going to be 传统的 Chineseness. 会变嘛? And we have to give them the freedom to 变. So this is the entire museum. It's an experience. It starts on the top, comes down, and then goes into this 研究中心，我们就是叫 genealogy center. So I won't go into the detail, but we're in the stages of planning it right now.
Wow.
But
Level 3.
But this is just the first phase. That's why, Robert, you reach out to me is 我觉得是缘分 because 我就是需要跟这个 group, get 你们的意见. But not today. I'll arrange another meeting. But this is a rendering, so it's not the actual museum. We're planning it, but to give people an idea. 就在那个 rendering, each floor will be very expansive, but in the middle, 我们就是叫这个 memory core. So all the different artifacts that came from your journey. 华人来美国的时候，最早的时候，他们比较穷 right? 他们心里只有几个宝贝的东西，就是 very precious things were in there, right? Maybe some gold or, some documents or some photograph. But all those things, 我们的 collection 在某个 85,000 items. 这个你看的这个 memory core, 这个都是真的我们的 items, 现在已经有了。But 我们还有 roadshow 去全国，就是 United States, 我们去 collect more to make this museum even better. And then you can take a look. And 就是用 technology, 就是 how do you go, 关系，华人的关系就是最重要, right? There's so much network. And then from the early history until today, early history 都是大部分就是来自 for the gold rush, 还有 build the transcontinental railroad. But then all these times of discrimination. Chinese Exclusion Act 1882, no Chinese can come in. This legislation did not expire until really 1965. 这个 quotas from 1943 到 1965, 每年只有105个人可以进来 from Hong Kong or Taiwan or Chinese anything. But it doesn't matter. 不是进来的人是有这个问题. It's whoever's already in the country. 他们的 discrimination is fierce. They dealt with so much racism and discrimination. 你想想看，为什么 like 华人最早来的时候 and you know them in Chinatown, 他们比较very uncomfortable, anonymous. It's because for their whole life, 他们住在美国, everyone said no Chinese, no Chinese. So 如果你住在这个 society 里面, they say, okay, you're already here, but we don't want any more of you. 你想想看，他们生活是多可怜 right?
对。
This is and nobody knows this history. 我们的 American textbooks 不教这个 history, right? Chinese exclusion, nobody knows. What else? They don't know Chinese people helped build the foundation of the country, the Transcontinental Railroad.
Right.
如果没有这个 Transcontinental Railroad, 美国今天不会这么发达, It would be impossible. And they don't even know so many thousands of Chinese died in building the railroad. It's so many. And 他们, can I tell you, compared to the Irish, many, many stories. 因为那个华人他们, 炒菜, when they made the food or they drink the water, they always boil it.
Right.
他们喝开水不是喝冷水. So the Irish, 他们都喝冷水. Many of them died from water contamination. And then everyone think, wow, 这个华人 doesn't seem so strong. But I don't know, they survived the big Irish guys. And it's this kind of story. We collect all these stories. And then so much of this will be also this sense of identity. 我刚刚说，我们不是一个 identity, right?
Right.
这个 discrimination 今天就是很 it's so painful because 他们就是要我们华人都是 foreign, right?
Right.
我们
Right.
我已经是 ABC， 可是我们有5代、6代、7代的华人在美国，他们还是 face the same discrimination。很多人还是会说，哦，你从哪里来的？哦，你的英文说的这么好。It's like crazy, right? But the sense of belonging, but 这个 ownership, you can have your full identity in America. And then how did Chinese people make a life in America? Even the discrimination so terrible, they can make a life here because they're smart, because they're hardworking. So we want to use this as an example also for other people to have a stronger sense of identity, that people can learn from the Chinese experience. It's not to be threatened. You can learn, right? Why did my parents work 16 hours a day? 我们为什么这么快会从最穷的会我们 last 80 years 你想想看 Chinese people went from distinct poverty to billionaire.
Yeah.
How? It's because you can learn something from this life. And then also just to give the opportunity to really create an experience. And then 最要紧就是 this group in particular, 我们就是说这个 transnational. 你的家在哪？家也在美国，家可能在 Marin County， 家可能在纽约，maybe in LA， 可能上海，可能香港有一个公寓 ，I don't know. But you're back and forth, Seattle, wherever it is. 你的小孩子可能现在在 Choate Rosemary Hall， 还是在那个 boarding school， 还是在那个 international school. I don't know. But 这个 back and forth 很重要 because that makes us who we are. And then again, just after the whole experience, end in this 研究中心, because then you can think about your own space in this. These are very, very powerful. And 我们就是很积极的做, like this is, if this museum already existed, I promise you, racism today would not be this bad. Because nobody, the problem we have right now, and I'm being very honest, I'm sorry, I'm so crazy about this whole thing. I don't know which Chinese scenery, but 有一个 analogy, 他们说 okay, 有一个a body of water, right? And then the bodies keep going down the water, the people keep drowning. And then 我们在这个 bottom just collect the bodies. Oh, why is this person trying to save the body? But nobody goes to the top of the top of the lake, the river. Why is the body going down the lake? Because no bridge. The bridge is broken. Mocha is trying to fix the bridge. We got to fix the bridge. Of course, 今天我们也是 have to fight anti-Asian hate. 这个很重要. And 你们最近看到那个 corporate leaders all did the Wall Street Journal thing. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. But we have to build the bridge. Otherwise, 今天just a one moment. You know why? I tell you, my whole life, I'm 48 years old. I have more acts of racism toward me growing up as a Chinese American woman than I can tell you. Every day there's some kind of microaggression or racism. When I was 7 years old, that's the first time I said, fuck you. Because 2 boys coming out of a yellow school bus say Chinese, Japanese, dirty knees, look at these. I'm 7 years old. And I came very, very hard on the outside. And then I said, I have to promise because we have to build the bridge. We have to make this stronger, solve the problem. And the big problem, then I said, what's the biggest problem? Big problem is nobody knows the discrimination. And what happens when a group of people are discriminated? This happens. We're still in this country dealing with the aftermath of exclusion.
Exclusion, yeah.
That's why maybe 可能最近, maybe some of your graduate students, came to the US for grad school or college or high school. And you say, oh, well, 这个 ABC, 他们 maybe they had different, they don't, maybe not, but you have to understand also that many of them, like me, grew up. We're not a full person. There's no space to be a full person in America. And I think maybe some of you understand. And when you're the minority, I'm, when I was at SOM, all my friends are mostly from China.
Yeah.
So some of you might know, Zhang Lei was my classmate, all these guys do a good job, X-Peng, Brian Gu, all these guys. And when I worked at Goldman, Martin Lau, Tencent, and all these guys were my coworkers. But it's amazing. It was so hard living. It's still hard. If you think to go to the beach, Are you
Sorry.
okay? No, that's okay. It's life.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry I'm so crazy, but I hope you understand what I'm saying.
No. It's such a wonderful speech. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure. I certainly, enjoyed it tremendously. I'm sure, most of people, tonight, if not everybody, greatly enjoying it. Thank you so much. So I guess, I saw this question on the chat room, and I want to ask that question too. So when will this, amazing museum be completed?
Yeah, it's I will say this thing also is the other thing that's difficult for Chinese Americans is philanthropy, right?
Yeah.
So, and this is part of the research that we're doing too. Remember the Sichuan earthquake?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
A lot of fundraising around the Sichuan earthquake. I was living in Hong Kong, in Hong Kong then. And then some people, they didn't use the money well, right? So people don't trust the Gongo and NGO, whatever, not
Right.
So
right.
bad reputation, right? But
Right.
also in the US, some people say, okay, how come Jewish people are so powerful? How come some of the white Anglo-Saxons so powerful? A lot of it has to do with philanthropy. I tell you this honestly, because Judeo-Christian, Jewish and Christians, they have the habit of 10%, right? So their 10% often goes to not-for-profit, doesn't just go to the temple or to the church. They consider not-for-profit very powerful. So sometimes you look at the boards. We need more Chinese Americans on boards, not-for-profit and for-profit boards. But the power of not-for-profits in the US is real, is very, very real, right? And then you talk to Andrew Yang, I don't know what he said, but some people say, how come no Asian American elected official? I'll tell you why. Because politics is about philanthropy, right? You won't get noticed until you put $500 at the door in your local neighborhood election, right? You're invisible until you put $500 there. And then once you do that, you become a little bit visible. And I tell you this from real experience because I was elected to the Board of Education in the town near New Haven, near Woodbridge. And it's and the prejudice and the microaggression was so real because they're scared that Chinese are going to take over, right? And I tell you, that's really scary. So not only do you have to be more philanthropic, so I'm in not-for-profit now, right? So, but anyone can be a philanthropist. It doesn't have to be, you have to wait. And I talk to a lot of Chinese Americans, oh, well, that person's richer, that person, but the power of many is important. And so this museum has been hard to do. The museum I told you how crazy I am. Everyone can tell how crazy I am. I thought I would get to this point after 2 years, right? Because I work hard, I do this, whatever. It took me 6 years to get here. And what do I mean by that? I thought, no problem. Chinese Americans, doesn't exist, not in history. It's an easy thing to sell to somebody, right? It is the hardest job I have ever had in my whole life. Goldman Sachs was easy compared to this job. Easy, because no resources, no philanthropy, and so difficult to get everything going. So what did I do? You have to crack the system. So the whole capital fundraise for the entire museum to buy the building and then to build it is $128 million. So
wow.
Yeah, where am I going to get $120 million? I said we have to fight inequity in New York City arts funding. So for 5 years, we knock on the crazy door of New York City New York City has the largest arts and cultural funding budget. So can you tell me, where is there a history museum of Chinese? Nowhere, right? No one has ever gotten money from New York City for capital. So we knocked on the door every year for 5 years. And I'm happy to share with you that they gave us the largest gift that they have given to any museum or arts and cultural that's not one of the 20 big ones. And the big ones is like Metropolitan Museum, MoMA. So New York City funded us $38.6 million.
Wow. 38 million. Wow.
38.6. And these are Ba and Lil. So I'm taking it 38.6 and 128. Okay. And then 30.6. The building, because people know New York City, Fanglishan Taipei, the building cost $50 million. 50. So MoCA already very, very quiet. We already raised the money to buy the whole building. So, but then it also costs money to renovate the whole brand new building.
Yeah, of course.
Violin, Ralph, the whole museum design. And also not only that, someone said we need to educate. We need to educate. We also do a lot of educational programming. So maybe Robert, 你认识那个荣宏, right?
Yeah.
Rong Hong is the first a Chinese student to graduate from a Western University, 就是 Yale, 1854. 他是安排120个11岁、12岁、13岁的 young men 来
留美幼童, right?
Chinese educational mission. 对. So like that history, Rong Hong的 history needs to be in every American textbook. Right? I mean, Robert, 你在笑, but 为什么每个小孩子在美国不认识那个荣宏? Rong Hong is dramatic, right? Because Rong Hong was the first Chinese education graduate. 想想看, Chinese people in America, education is the #1 contribution.
Yeah.
Rong Hong is your hero. He's my hero.
There's a statue of Rong Hong on the Yale campus, right?
Robert, do you know the statue was in the corner? 我在 Yale 的时候，我说为什么这个荣宏的 statue 在 corner? So I said 荣宏应该在那个图书馆. So I was the one who told the President Salovey, I said, not President Salovey, the guy before Levin. I said, can we take Rong Hong out of the corner? I'm not joking, Robert. Rong Hong was in the corner. I'm like, Rong Hong has to be in the middle of the room. He has to be in the library.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I have a link to the Rong Hong story. I'm gonna put, and we made a thing called the MoCA Hero. So we made one about Rong Hong, and also the Transcontinental Railroad. Yeah, let me show you this one, and we're doing one on Jerry Yang right now, and one on Maya Lin. We want to do. Yeah, I'm a little crazy. I'm so sorry, everyone. Some people are so good; they're already linking me in. Go to that website. You can. One's on the railroad. One is on the on Rong Hong. But this is targeted to 4th grade, 5th grade, and 6th grade.
Okay.
Because you have to start early in the classroom.
Yeah.
If it doesn't start in the classroom, it will never go to the dining room, and it will never go to the boardroom. And I promise you, if MoCA doesn't exist, you may not make it to the C-suite unless 你当自己的老板. Then you can become the C-suite. Eric Yuan, Zoom, any of these people, 他们 have to be their own boss. But you try to be your own, you try to make it to the C-suite in corporate America, I promise you, it's very difficult. That's why MoCA has to be the bridge to help inform everybody from the 4th grade, from 6th grade, from 8th grade, from junior high school. Yeah, yes, right? Thank you. I'm crazy about this. I don't know. I'm losing my mind.
No, thank you so much. As you can see from the chat room, I think pretty much everybody shares your enthusiasm tonight. Nancy, so I think I already see you are going here. So I actually I took liberty of creating this link on my PowerPoint. I'm going to share this with this group. So let me see. Okay. Okay, here is it. Okay, so if I may, so everybody on tonight's call, please, use your, iPhone to scan this QR code. This, so this will lead you to the donation page
Oh
of
my
MoCA.
gosh, thank you. You didn't have to, thank you.
Yeah, so, please, everybody, please scan this. This will take you to the donation page of MoCA. I'm sure, everybody agrees that, we all need to chime in, right? This is for our collective benefit, for the benefit of our children, and we all need to help.
And if you have children in schools, and if any of them, like the PTA or something, want someone to speak about any of this, please, please offer me up, offer MoCA. We, many people ask us about our operating budget, and it's, I want to be honest with you. When I said this is the hardest job I ever had, this is the hardest. Our annual budget is only $2.8 million before, and we almost closed. I didn't get paid for 6 months because we couldn't get enough people to support the museum, because everyone is running so fast in their own space. But we keep saying we have to build the bridge, because this will help you in your own space. I promise you. And then what happened was, it's a good news. So during this some of you may have heard there was a fire in our collection. 1 year ago. This is yuanfen. This is why we have to do this. The fire is in New York City, in Chinatown. A very, very dense neighborhood. The fire started on the 4th floor. It went up to the 5th floor. 5-alarm fire. The 5th floor, the whole roof comes down. There was 16 hours of water going into the building, trying to tame the fire. The 4th floor roof come down. The 3rd floor roof comes down. All the water's going in. All the water destroys the 1st floor. Guess what's saved in that whole building? The 2nd floor. Guess what's on the 2nd floor? MoCA's entire collection. 85,000 items were saved from a crazy fire in New York City. We got 98% of the items out of the fire.
Wow, that's magical, right?
Magical. And then that was right before COVID. So right before we pressured the city, when we pressured the city, we said, well, you have to help, they don't want us to go in. They said the building's not safe. So we're calling them every day. We have to get this stuff out of there. This is things, we have newspaper article from the first Chinese American who started the first Chinese newspaper in America, 1883. We have a copy of that newspaper, and it survived. Everything survived. So we said we have to go into, so we literally taking boxes out of the museum. I have to show you some of the, if you haven't seen the image. So the miracle of that is enough to tell you that this, if you believe in any of that, craziness. I'm going to share my screen really quickly, because I think you'll see the magnitude of this crazy. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, let me show you. We put this Google Arts and Culture is, this was the fire.
Oh my God.
This was how the building looked. This is one of the oldest buildings. It had an elementary school that had the first Chinese immigrants went to school here, alongside Jewish and Italian people. Sorry. Sorry. I have to show you some of these other, okay, here. So after the fire, Google Arts, this is some of the items we collected early on. These are so interesting. I mean, so many of these things. And then all we properly assessed it in acid-free. Even the museum experts who came to help us, they were so amazed. They said, we thought you don't know how to collect things. We thought you don't know how to store things. 他们就在很 you guys know how to do this. Oh, this is pretty good. You know, this is the fire.
Oh my God.
You can't imagine.
Wow.
And our things are on the second floor.
The vicious flames tore through 70 millimeter.
This is a 5-alarm fire. And for 8, but everything was brought out of the museum. You can't imagine. And then
I remember that.
Yeah.
You know, I visited the museum at the end of 2019, and then like a couple months later, I saw this news broke out saying there's a fire. You know, I felt that's pretty sad, you know.
And then we were able, look at this is my team member taking stuff out of the thing. We only have 13 people. That's me. We're taking literally like by hand, taking things out of this. That's our co-chair.
Yeah.
This guy, he's all-American tennis player, Harvard graduate. You know,
Wow.
this is what we had to do to save all these things.
Mm-hmm.
Ang Lee, Dolan's Lian, right? The movie. Many of his early work the documentary is all here.
Wow.
And this is the Baobei. This is the things that came when the first immigrants came. Some of the cheap in our collection is over $2 million.
Wow.
And now an update on a story.
Can you imagine? This is Yue Ma. She's the head of our collection.
Mm-hmm.
And 记不记得那个福建那个 Golden Venture in 1993, 200多的undocumented immigrants came from Fujian. And they made these incredible art sculptures. We have the largest collection. And this is these all came, this is because we wrap them professionally. And they came out of the fire. You can't even imagine. That's our curator. And this is paper made by the Fujianese undocumented. They made 1,000 of these. And they gave them to the lawyers who helped them come out of it. A golden eagle.
Mm-hmm.
Look at this craftsman, amazing. This is the undocumented, the boat, they came off the boat in 1993. And they made these incredible, there was one very famous a paper folder.
Yeah.
So anyway, so in the process of the fire, the other amazing thing happened is we got a lot of attention. So the Ford Foundation, which is the largest foundation in America, they picked 20 of America's cultural treasures all over the country. And they picked Mocha as one of them.
Which year did they pick?
No. This is new. They never did this before.
Oh, okay.
So what they said is after all these issues about fairness and justice, they said there are 20 treasures in America that don't get enough attention, that are vital. They don't do this every year. It's just once. And Mocha was the only Chinese American anything. So there's 3 other Asian all over the country. One is Wing Luke in Seattle. It's a Pan-Asian. One is a theater company in Los Angeles, East West Players. And the 4th was a Japanese American National Museum in Little Tokyo in LA. And in New York City, there are 6. The other 5 are all African American Black institutions. Apollo Theater, Jazz Center, Studio Museum in Harlem. I just want to give everybody hope. This is going to turn around, but we need to make the museum and we need to build the museum.
Absolutely. Yeah. Look, I mean, right now there are 250 people online, so I'm sure all 250 people will try to help, and and from these 250 people tonight, we're going to be able to reach thousands of people, right, through family and friends and networks. So this is definitely a collective effort. Everybody, every one of us needs to chime in. So Nancy, I'm sure there are tons of questions for you, and I want to leave some time for our audience to ask you questions, if you don't mind. So I see one person just raised her hand. Alison Zhao. So if you are still there, now you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Alison? Okay. Maybe Alison.
Robert, I'd like to, I can.
Yes.
I've been
Please, yeah.
listen to all your inspiring story. It's so touching. Whatever you do, the magnitude, the impact what you do, what our Chinese Coffee Club do is nothing to compare with yours. Even we have people trying so hard last 3 years. I think we wanted to stand by at your side. I told you this reason I call Chinese Coffee Club. I don't want Asian club. I said a Chinese Coffee Club actually initialized in Soho. So my original office is in the Soho, and on the top floor of our Two Sigmas building, that's where the Chinese Coffee Club launched it. And I think that all of your, we have 250 people. We decided to gonna cut some of your talk to promote in our, mailing list and then YouTube. We want we will try to, side by side with you, help you promote your program and also help you get fun lunch. And again, I also very touching about, your story that you transform from, you can work in a very high paid job, but you transform from investment banker to nonprofit, and you sacrifice your own, income and to doing all those things for American Chinese to try to push the culture. Everyone can hear that. We can see that, and you're such wonderful, beautiful lady, and you're doing this thing for our culture, for our peoples, for all those that. And thank you very much, Nancy. And then if you need a volunteer, and Chinese Coffee Club have a lot of people living in New York, and like I say, we have a cup of coffee together. and I want to leave this to other people to ask you a question.
Angelique, Angelique, thank you. I really appreciate it. And you're doing amazing things. I think we all have to do everything together. And I'm not trying to be modest or anything. I just think this is important, I'm honest with all of you. Like, I was really looking forward to talking to you because it's a very hard time, I think, for all of us. Yeah, it's very frustrating, but I want to give you some hope that we can fix the bridge. And mocha sudu.
Yeah, mocha sudu. Yeah.
Actually, 咖啡会帮我们的速度更快、更急、提醒的做
Will be better. Will be better.
Caffeination.
So Nancy, so now we have some people who raise their hands and want to ask a question. So I see. So the first person raised her hand is Justin Yan. Justin, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Oh, hi, Ms. Xiao. Thank you for the amazing lecture. I'm a part of the PTA in the Hunter College High School. My daughter is in that school. And around 2 weeks ago, we had a joint meeting with their elementary school together with have this forum, Asian hate crime, against Asian hate crime. So I'm wondering if you have time, if you can spare like a half hour, if you are interested in, to talk about the collection in Mocha.
Christine, I went to Hunter. I'm a graduate of Hunter.
Oh, wow.
And I tell you,
I don't know if you're interested in like a half hour.
Of course, I do anything. The teachers, some of them are, I graduated a long time ago in 1990. But Justine, this is how crazy. I was already crazy then. Like, I was student body president at Hunter. And that was because I was feeling a lot of racism. So already a lot of very subtle microaggression. And now a lot of, we are very, very close, the Hunter High School alumni community. In fact, I was going to celebrate my 30th reunion, and the entire class wanted to, the event was going to be at Mocha. And they're all supporting.
Wow.
Yeah. So Justine, anytime this is, you can, let me put my email. And then anyone, if you want to email me, I'll try to be very responsive. And I have many, there are a lot of Asian American parents at Hunter that are very concerned about all of this, especially because it's such a special school. Obviously it's hard to get into that school, but also, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about Hunter. It's not always, yeah, anyway, we can talk anytime, just email me. Maybe a group of us can get up together offline. Yeah, Lucy. And, you know, I want to
I
tell you.
definitely will email you. Thank you so much.
You're bringing up kids that are pretty smart, but they're very weird too. They might do like a museum job. They might give up a Goldman job and do a museum job one day. I apologize for them.
Yeah. So yeah, so next question, Laura
Thank you in
Liu.
advance.
Hi, Nancy. Thanks so much for your wonderful presentation. And I will also take you up on your offer to speak to community groups. So I'm a trustee of our town library, and we are planning events for May, which is Asian Heritage Month. So I will definitely reach out to you, trying to, plan something for May. Like if you're busy, you can send someone on your team too. But yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for the wonderful job you do at the museum. I have two quick questions, which I also sent to the organizer earlier. So one of my questions is about sort of kind of content creation around all these amazing Chinese American history. So I just wonder if MoCA does, projects or maybe collaborate with authors in terms of creating children's books or podcasts or programs similar to the Moth Story Hour. If you can speak to that a little bit, that'll be great. And then my second question, actually, I think Hunter, the connection with Hunter is a great segue to my second question. I'd love to hear your take on all these sort of, controversy around the city's specialized high school program. I'd love to hear sort of your take on it, and what role does sort of Chinese traditional culture plays in these sort of kind of the movements.
Yeah.
I know it's a long question, but thank you.
It's so, and I'll try to be succinct about my answer. Thank you, Laura. Which town are you in?
Scarsdale. I'm Angeline's neighbor. And this is such an iconic suburb.
I know.
And now there's so many of us.
High property taxes. Good education system.
Yes, it's sort of just similar to the Hunter idea, like we all aggregate around these things, right?
And, I think you're answering your own question. And I've been thinking a lot about this for a variety of reasons. And I alluded to it. I think just two really quick thoughts about this. And having also looked at the development of curricula, I'm really happy. The other hopeful thing is McGraw-Hill, you might know McGraw-Hill is a publishing textbook company, the largest. They just formed an equity advisory board. So 6 people, and I just joined that board. So their publications, this board is going to help influence 25 million children's eyes. So, and I will say I'm the only Asian American on that board. But again, we have to build this bridge. So we are definitely working in consortium with McGraw-Hill, all of these other fundamental places. And also we always feature writers and authors. And the shop, before we closed during the pandemic, always is so popular because we basically have almost every Chinese American contemporary writer. We sell their books. And it doesn't matter if it becomes an inventory issue for us, and costs a lot of money to hold the books. But we want to be the Strand. Many of you know the Strand bookstore is very famous for collect. We want to be the Strand of Chinese American, Asian American writers. And a lot of them also, we look for things that are about traditional Chinese philosophy and literature that's been translated. We have a lot of like Greg Tang does a lot about Singaporean math and Chinese math that he teaches, but it's in English. It's very interesting. But the big question about I recommend to watch the College Scandal, that new Netflix documentary about the Ivy League scandal. That was actually somewhat enlightening for me. You're right, Laura and everybody else. We all know we aggregate, right? We do it for a couple of reasons. Some of them are obvious because we like the comforts of being familiar with neighbors and people who might want to damajang. I don't know. I do. Every week. But at the same time, we also subtly, the US indirectly tells us to aggregate. It's one of these subtle microaggressions that we deal with because of exclusion, because of the aftermath of exclusion. Many people think Chinatowns, oh, they're so dirty. Oh, they're for tourists. Chinatowns were created as safe zones because when the Exclusion Act happened, even if you were a citizenship, they took away your citizenship. So you had to carry an ID card to prove that you had legal status to be in the country, but you didn't have citizenship. So what does that mean? No mortgage, no loan, no life, right? In Chinatown, New York City in about 1920, 4,000 Chinese men, about 30 Chinese women. So no life, right? 他们就是 formed and 现在 is well known as, they were called bachelor societies. So if you came early on in the 60s and 70s, you walk around Chinatown. I don't speak Cantonese. Actually, I speak a little bit. And I like all these men hanging outside, Toyen, just like hanging out, right? These were all the bachelors. And they never married. No one to marry them. Not only no Chinese women, but nobody wants to marry them because who wants to marry someone that the law says is not wanted? So they had no life. So they formed these societies together. So what did they do? They lived in these small tenement apartments, 6, 7, 8 of them in this whole area. So they're taught to aggregate, right? We're taught subtly to aggregate, but that's also a problem. So the Ivy scandal, that documentary says that there are 3,000 institutions all over the world, right? All over the country. You can get a good education, but at the same time, we all want to go to Hunter. We all want to live in Scarsdale, right? We all, because it's more of a less risk. But sometimes, and I'll tell this to the Hunter parents in particular, if I had stayed at John Bowne High School, would I have gotten into a university that was more suited for me? Yes, I would have. I would have been probably the valedictorian of my local high school. But what happened is I was taken from Flushing to the Upper East Side. My parents, I grew up in an immigrant household. I never used a fork before I went to Hunter. I used chopsticks every night. We had like 2个菜一碗, 一个汤, it's like I had a very traditional Chinese upbringing. I'm suddenly placed into Upper East Side Manhattan. And it's very, so there's a lot of things that are happening for people who are growing up biculturally. And not to say that we don't want to strive for the best, but at the same time, we're not going to win this race because there's going to be discrimination at this level. So there is a question of how do we're competing with each other, unfortunately. And we have to break down the system to get rid of the discrimination. But before we do that, we're going to still, because people pit us together. And I go back, I applied to Harvard at Hunter. And I just realized, I still remember Ken Shen was our interviewer. Ken Shen interviewed all the Asian American women. That was his job at Harvard. You're telling me Harvard doesn't discriminate? He was assigned to interview all the Asian American women. Why is that? That's not good. That's not correct. It's like, okay, this guy's in charge of picking one of the Asian Americans. So that type of, because they want to create this homogeneity among Asians, among Asian Americans. They want us to all be this one cluster. And then we self-impose it because we aggregate. But we self-impose the aggregation because of discrimination. So it's this constant cycle that somehow we need to find ways to break it. But I'm sorry, Laura, I know this isn't very hopeful, but I feel again that we have to build the bridge. Like we need to get it into the classroom to break down the stereotype. Otherwise, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
But use me and use the museum, and get subscribe to our virtual programming. We do a ton of virtual programming. We've done 4 or 5 a week since March of last year. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I'll reach out to you about the library event. Thank you.
Okay. The next one is Liang. Liang, you can unmute yourself. Liang, are you still there? Okay, maybe I'll come back to you later. Then.
Oh, hi. So did you mean Leah?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I heard you said Liang, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And Nancy, thank you so much. I really love your passionate presentation. So something that really sort of, make me thought really hard is that we as Chinese American came to this country, whether or not we came when our ancestors came here to help to build the railroad, or when we came here to pursue education and then stayed, we all work hard to work our way up. So it's about the meritocracy, right? And so somebody also asked a similar question in the chat in terms of affirmative action. So essentially, because we work so hard, we, as what our mothers always told us, you have to work twice as hard, be twice as good in order to get to somewhere, and which is not right. Why can't we have a society that would, reward people based on their efforts? And Harvard should admit Asians if they're good, instead of self-imposing some kind of quota. And many of us have gone to Ivies, but things are not looking good for our children.
Oh.
And who is to say that a Black American kid that grew up in Harlem is more deserving than a poor Chinese American kid that grew up in Chinatown? So why do we love Harvard so much? No, it's not a matter of why we love Harvard so much. It's about, I was just responding to a question from the chat. It's about being fair and provide a true meritocratic society. So I would love to hear, because you kind of, talk a little bit about this as well. I'm also very passionate about, how do we, really, really be valued in this society. It just doesn't seem right that you have to work twice as hard just because you as a group are very good academically, so you get picked over. So I would love to hear your take on that.
Again, you guys are warming my heart so much, because these are so tricky. And thank you, Leah. There are a lot of what I call strategic tension right now. There are all these tension points, and this is the big one. Why don't we get awarded for meritocracy? Why do we have to work triple fast? Why is there a mocha sudu? Why do all these things have to happen? I think it's really, really difficult, because also you're talking about racism and that does, and I think we've all been engaged in this conversation. And I guess I encourage myself to continue understanding what racism is for Black and African Americans, because it's really, really complicated. And, I encourage everyone to really read the books to understand, because it's possible, because of the extra effort I make, and I'm just going to speak from my own voice, the extra efforts that I've made, or the extra components of like how hard I try, and that I'm in the front row, all these things. We applied for the capital money from the city for 3 years and we got 0. And every year they told me to do something else, and I did it. It's like 2 inches. This application is insane. And then I said, why am I working so hard and you're not giving us the money for the museum? And they said, we don't believe that you can do it. So I felt this thing. I was working harder and harder. And then I realized it's not a meritocracy. And at the same time, I realized that, and I do realize this, for Black people in this country, there have been 400 years of oppression. There is a systemic bias, and we all see it. I think we all feel it. There is an undeniable systemic bias against Black people in this country. That's because they were slaves. In this same vein, there has been 200 years of oppression of Chinese Americans in this country.
Yeah.
And oppression is real. And sometimes you don't think about oppression toward Chinese Americans because we're successful now. We're in the upper wealth income. We've been able to, turn the generation. But there have been 200 years of oppression. And sometimes we don't like to say there's 200 years of oppression because 我们比较丢脸, right? So we don't want it to look like we can do this. This is exactly the fundamental thing that I've been thinking about. And I'm listening to a lot of there's a very famous podcast about Chinese philosophy. And I recommend that we, you all know Chinese philosophy probably, but I'm going back to really think about Mengzi, Kongzi, all this, like what is and fundamentally, Western culture in the United States, the predominant culture and Chinese culture, they clash, right? They fundamentally clash.
Yeah.
They clash everywhere. So one quick example is we kept getting denied for grants. The foundations kept saying no to us. And I was just like, why I was putting the best grant together. I was the best student on these grants, right? And then finally I said, I don't understand. So I became a grant reviewer. So the foundations seek people to help review the grants. So I said, I'm going to figure out what they're doing because I can't tell. It's like you're helping to review the admissions process, right? So if you have an opportunity to review the admissions process or be a part of it at your alumni institutions, raise your hand high because that's a bridge, right? That is a bridge that you can fix. So as I'm doing it, I'm reading all these other grant applications from Black organizations, from Hispanic, from all these other grants. They're not afraid to do it, right? They're like, we have no money. We don't know how to do this. I have no idea if I'm going to open the doors tomorrow, and I need your help. That's what the grant applications look like. Guess what they look like for my institution? I can do it. Believe in me. I can run 100 miles. Promise. But, I can do everything I say I'm going to do. I can do it in 1 day. You think it takes 10 days. I'm going to build the railroad. That's what my grant application said. So in some ways, the other translation for Dunian is not being honest. So what I'm suggesting is I was not being honest in my grant application because I did not want to embarrass the museum. But I have to change my thinking. I have to be honest about what the need is because no one is going to respond to your need just by thinking you're working hard. Not in this country. So that's kind of the racism part.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah, Leah, you know what I mean? It's like we have to get into places to make a difference, like get onto the admissions review board.
Right.
But also
Yes.
read books. I mean, I know you read books. I don't mean but this is a great book. If anyone cast, it's by Isabel Wilkerson. Thank you. That's a really good book to talk about the hierarchy of class. And there are other good books like that, but and then think about racism in this country. Think about racism toward
I think, yes, I totally agree with you. We should all get onto the admissions interview for our colleges and help more Asians to get in. We should donate more. We should have more influence on the school boards, and we should do all of that. And as you said, we need to do more philanthropic work, just to make sure that we have that influence.
Yeah. And philanthropy is not just to the school, right? Because
For sure.
educational philanthropy is very, very prevalent. But that's like a tit for tat, right? And that's important, and you feel that important. And I know a lot about it, but you need to go to not-for-profits are building civil society that are making a difference in civil society. and not just Asian ones, not just Asian American ones. Like put your face in other places around other tables. My greatest fear right now is that we're talking to each other, Asian Americans and Chinese Americans, in a vacuum, right? And that's very, very possible, that we're in a vacuum. So
Yes, we should make more friends with Black and white and anybody who's open and willing to listen to our stories.
yeah, and meet people where they are, because there's going to be a lot of misunderstanding and miscommunication. I know that for sure. And also the other thing, because we're dealing with this, is don't fight within the community. I don't know, you know, China went through a civil war because we like fighting with each other. Sometimes we lose sight of the enemy and we like to fight with each other. And that happens over, and I speak from the museum's historical lens too. Over and over again, Chinese communities have fought with each other. And I think, unfortunately, that goes back to the, you know, ancient times. But in America, we really need to stay together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next person raising his hand is Jeff. Jeff, you can unmute yourself.
Oh, I can Mandarin. Hey, Jeff, I know Jeff.
Oh, hi, Nancy. Great to see you here. And I'm actually so glad that you didn't keep your answers succinct. And it's one of those Zoom calls that I'm sure a lot of people are zoomed out. And but this is one Zoom call that it gives me a shot in the arm better than the jabs that my family's getting these days. So thank you very much for doing this. It was about 3 days after the fire when I visited in the area. I went to the Xiaolongbao place in Chinatown, and it was just devastating. And I had no idea that second floor was saved. It absolutely is a sign that we all must do something. This is unbelievable. You know, I'm not, you know, anyway. So, but my question, actually, you touched on a lot. One question is, you know, I actually, you know, maybe this is gonna sound harsh, but I feel many of us were, me included, were quite muted during the, let's call it the Black Lives Movement, that period, you know, and, you know, I actually honestly don't know how to voice don't know what to say. And so I'm glad you're on the board, you know, as like the one at McGraw Hill about, I'm sure that it's a board of not just Asian Americans or Chinese Americans, but it's building that bridge. And I think, you know, so just my question is, you know, how do we, and I guess it is a complicated question, how do we not race to the bottom, you know, to say, oh yeah, I was oppressed more, so I should get the front seat now. I mean, this is just a losing battle, right? And it's not the right approach, but it seems very, I remember one of the New Yorker articles, there was a police brutality case in Brooklyn, maybe a couple of years ago, involved a Chinese American officer killing a Black man. And it was the first time, you know, and that officer was being tried. I'm not sure how the case went, but it was the first time when we coalesced. It was, the article basically said it was how sad it was, you know, when one of the first times Chinese American communities got together, it was against, you know, it was in a case like this, you know, no fault to them, but it's just, you know, we're in this sort of, you know, I'd like to be hopeful, but this is one question, you know, any experience, any advice that you could give, that would be really helpful. My other question is very short, you know, it may sound harsh again, you know, there's actually a generational difference between, let's call it, you know, I have this mental thing, you know, Chinese who've immigrated here 5-10 years, within the last 5-10 years versus Chinese who've immigrated a long time ago. You know, the absorption of the kind of microaggressions or the discriminations, oppressions are very different, and they view our meritocracy is very different. And how do we build that bridge? And finally, I just, you know, I'd love to hear your answer, but there was one book reminded me, it was Michael Sandel's Tyranny of the Merit. I would highly recommend that as well. So thank you very much, and everyone, for your questions and sharing. But Nancy, I look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, no, Jeff, thank you so much. It's you know, Mocha, the Mocha team, the only 13 of us, they want to respond very quickly after Atlanta. And I really said, please don't react. Let's think about this for a moment. And I think I struggle with this so much, which is part of my pain right now. Like, I'm happy that we're all stop AAPI. There's so much energy around it, but I don't want it to be a moment. And also the irony is there needed to be this tragedy, right? For people to recognize the Museum of Chinese America, the fire. There needed to be this tragedy in Atlanta for us to come together. And there need to be grandmothers and grandfathers getting hurt. We need to create a system change. I think that's, and there are some people who need to do the bodies, and then some people who need to build the bridge. But bandwagoning is also very, very tricky. But also around this whole language around Black Lives Matter, did some of you see in Flushing, there was a huge, like, I want the police. So it clashed with the whole BLM effort. And then it created more anti-Asian American hate on top of everything else. But when we're looking at that, it's like fundamental misunderstanding about the situation and education around what is fundamentally happening. And I am sure that if anyone has a teenager on this call, you know, Laura and other people and anyone else has a teenager, if they have a vocabulary that is different from our vocabulary. And each word is loaded. On top of that, they're teenagers. And you are not going to win that conversation with them. So what is a possible solution? You go to the museum together. So there were those two football players. One was Black and one was Jewish. And they were having a conflict. And the Jewish guy said, why don't we go to the African American Museum with you? And then let's go together to the Holocaust Museum. Let other things carry the conversation for you, because then you can react to different texts together and different experience together, because you will not win the conversation on Black Lives Matter because of the generational difference and because of the cultural difference. You know, you just go down this whole glossary. I'm on these phone calls every day with Generation Z and Gen X and even millennials. And as I'm processing this conversation, I'm thinking, my friends at SOM, my friends in Hong Kong and China, they cannot have this conversation. This is not a conversation that like is easily digestible. So we're furthering creating this kind of tension and further separating and dividing us, right? Dividing our own families on this. Because they're like, why? Why don't I want the police? But they're attacking me. I want police. Why do I not want the police? And then this guy, you know, I had to, you know, beat up just think, and a lot of the acts of crime right now are being conducted by Black people and brown people against Asian Americans. So I'm always nervous when they show the photograph, because that's going to escalate the tension, right? Not solving our problem here. And the most important thing, Jeff, you said is to give you real numbers. From 1882 to 1943, about 100,000 Chinese people in the country. And it grew a little bit based on marriage, but not very much. There was basically stagnation. 1943, every year legally, only 105 Chinese could come in. That was not until 1965 that the quota was lifted, and then the quota got moved to 20,000 from any given country. And that was predominantly Hong Kong and Taiwan came in from Chinese speaking areas, but also many who went to Burma, to Southeast Asia, went to Canada, went to Brazil, went to Panama, went to Cuba. Then they all started converging. The reason they went to those places is they couldn't get into the US. So the Chinese diasporic movement was because of exclusion in the US. So that was 20,000 in a year. So 65, 60, 80, and then the quota was even further lifted. And in 1980, after 79, after China reopened, then the influx of, you know, Chinese mainland immigration to the United States. There are more Chinese people who have come in the last 15 years than total in the United States prior to that period. So that's why the Museum of Chinese America right now, I keep reminding the team, is disproportionately focused on the earlier part of the immigration story. It's a longer period of time, but it's fewer people. So the last 40 years has to be proportionally represented in the new museum. And that's what we're working on. So Robert, when you went, you probably thought, wait, I don't see myself. I don't understand. This is all about the history, like a long
Early
time ago.
history, yeah.
Yeah. But we're doing the last 40 years because that's like Jeff teaching Mandarin, like the schools that are coming up, the Hanban, the Scarsdale groups, all these, the Tsinghua Xiaoyou, and then like the running marathons and all these groups of people. And the last part I'll just say is, if you were educated, this is a sociological testament. If you did your predominant schooling, your formative years in China through high school and college, your sense of self is very different than me, than someone who grew up in a marginalized minority country. And I'm sure you've experienced that with some of your Asian American, like, why are they so worried about who they are? Why are they so confused? Because we don't know who we are. I'm still figuring out who I am, right?
Yeah.
And that's the big difference. And so give those people some space to, also be who they're trying to be.
No, Nancy, thank you very much. Just for what it's worth, that last story that you said, or the last example that you gave, I have a friend who married an African man. And when he came to the US recently, he had the same experience. He said, what is this all about? He's very certain. He's very sure of himself. He's never had a discrimination, right? Racism in can't remember, Sierra Leone, right? And he came to New Jersey. He's like, this is ridiculous. I mean, every day there's small things here and there.
Yeah.
And I think that's anyway, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you.
It beats down on you, right? The microaggression. Microaggression is real. So many of us have a sixth sense about the microaggression. That's real. And every day when microaggression happens, it chips away at who you are. And that's the danger of racism.
So, and then maybe there's a bridge to be built between the generations of Chinese Americans who are here now. So thank you.
Thank you.
So Nancy, so I want to be mindful of time. It's already past 10:30. So I think I will just ask the last question for tonight. I will just use that privilege as by being the host. So I mean, or you already talked about in a few ways that we can help, but maybe as a summary, can you just tell us again, in what ways can we, the 250 people on this call tonight, and our friends, our family, how can we help MOCA, help you, help the movement that you are building at MOCA, to raise the awareness, of racism against Chinese in America, and to help, even raise our awareness among ourselves, right? I mean, how can we help?
Yeah, thank you, Robert, and thank you to you and Angeline for having me. Someone said, "Oh, Nancy, just this comes up all the time." They're like, some of you have heard of Bairenhui, right? C100, right? Yeah. So every time I at the MOCA, most people say, "Have you asked Bairenhui?" Bairenhui can help fund your museum, and that's the same assumption we always make. And also we say, "Oh, Bairenhui 有钱," I'm just a small. But I would be happier. There are 25 million Asian Americans in the US. It's probably in the next census will be even greater. Of that, Chinese ancestry is the greatest number. It's about 6 million in this country. I would be much happier if, 6 million people gave $20 than 5 people gave $20 million. And I think that's because the content of the museum, like just the same thing, the admissions revenue at MOCA is only 2% of the revenue. Because it's more important for us to have you and your children come to the museum, and to have Black and African American people come to the museum, and to have anyone come to the museum, no barrier to entry, no price point. And also, how many, you should ask yourself, how much do you typically want to pay when you go to a museum? Yeah, the answer is always zero.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So nobody wants to pay to go to a museum, but that creates a real difficulty around it. So I would encourage three things. One is, we're going to reopen July 15th, and we're doing it safely. We're going to do an exhibit about anti-AAPI. So in the last 16 months, we've collected stories. In the beginning, we wanted to collect the positive stories about the network, the 关系. So a lot of people were saying, "Oh, 清华校友在还在北京, help the Hong Kong people, and then get the PPE to Boston, Massachusetts, right? Tencent was working with this place, Yale China was working with all these places, and it was beautiful because they bring all this connection together to help solve a problem." So we took down all those stories, and then they became "I am not a virus," and then there was a racism. So we collected about almost 600 stories and artifacts about this period of time. So we decided to do a special exhibit about that. So when we reopen in July, come visit us. That's number one.
Okay.
Number two, sign up on the website, info@MOCA NYC, or you can go to the website and explore the website. It's a new website. It's purposely meant to give you a lot of information, and it's bilingual. And we just built it, so we're adding more content. We had to shift to a new platform, but sign up for it because we have virtual programming all the time. So next week we have Richard Louis, the MSNBC anchor. Later in the month, David Lamb, if anyone's in finance, they know Lamb Research. David Lamb, the founder of Lamb Research, he's going to do a talk with us. We had the first state senator elected, Mei Yi, a couple weeks ago. Maya Lin's going to do something. So it just gives you more of those stories. And then if you could help me very directly get, every Chinese person to give $20, then you would make me happy. But, we want to get the museum done sooner than later. If there's anyone who wants to help in that way to maybe host a coffee somewhere else, with a specific group, with other people, we will, we welcome that. And I can talk until I'm blue in the face because we want to get this done. And I also have a dream that I want to get this done faster and better
Right.
than the other museums. We want to show a face to this because we also will get a lot of recognition for that on a national level. And I think that's really important. And I will say one thing that comes up very often when we talk to foundations, like Bloomberg Philanthropies is also thinking about a gift supporting the museum, and they have supported us quite a bit. But sometimes people say, well, where are the Chinese Americans? Where are they supporting this?
Yeah.
And I say, yes, of course. But also we have to meet people where they are, because the problem is Chinese American philanthropy is still finding itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but thank you so much.
Yeah, so Nancy, I think I plan to meeting with you for sure. And Chinese Coffee Club have the same mission with Go to working with the grassroots. And, like I just mentioned before this meeting that, my Go passion key, I experienced same pain with you, that no donation. That's why I have to launch the Visualize Academy to teach myself. Today I teach 8 hours. I haven't been stopped leaving my room. We all trying to be creative to create a budget to support the nonprofit, support our Asian American. And I'm here with you. And I think in the future, Chinese Coffee Club can help you to, for fundraising, organize the event, and, to even what you just mentioned, $20 from each. And we can actually plan for that when I meet you, because they live very close to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the grassroots effort is important. I mean, and if anyone does know someone who is looking for a large donation to the museum, now is looking for the name opportunity. So that's something you never see a Chinese name on many things. Now there's a little bit more at educational institutions and like a Yale and other places, but you don't see it on art museums or cultural museums. So we're like naming the lobby, naming this. So there's real opportunity. And also we're very practical, right? It's a tax deduction. Maybe you need a tax deduction. Maybe you have a SPAC, or maybe you have a M&A opportunity, or you're coming into, don't give it to the government, give it to MOCA. I'll do the math for you. I don't need to, everyone here, stereotype.
Yeah, we're forced to have a sick face and
Yeah.
to ask people donation, same as here. So I hear you, and then I think you know, you inspire us, and you touch down our pain point. And I think a lot of people still stay in this room, and will thinking more. And I actually feel the same with, you know, when people ask me, because last year we did ACUC donation, but then many people come to me and say, Angela, what are you gonna do? And I have the exact same response with you. I said, wait, I don't want to be part of that. I need a thinking. We need the people really thinking, put on action daily, little by little, rather than just show up on the street and say, oh, I hate, right? So we need the people really donate money to support the community. We need the people really coming to volunteer to doing the good thing for the communities. That's the same thing. That's why I said I actually going to have a series of speech, and you are the number one today. And then next couple weeks we're gonna invite more speaker come to teach how to defend ourselves, all the interest talk. But I would definitely collaborate with you and do more thing about this.
And can I, the last thing I want, you know, sometimes we feel a little guilt right now, because maybe we don't feel comfortable going to the vigil or going to the protest. Maybe that's not something we're comfortable with. That's okay. I just want to say to everyone, it's okay if you don't feel comfortable doing that. So you can focus on the bridge. Focus on the bridge, right? Because just because everyone's rushing to you know, remember, to do one thing doesn't mean that's what you should be doing. That this is all about who we are, right? Let us be who we want to be. So fix the bridge if you don't want to be in the protest. You know, there's a lot that we need to do.
Great. So Nancy has generously shared her email with all of us, so we all know how to reach her. And you know, I have also shared the links to the MOCA website, you know, in the chat room. So you know, everybody can go to check out the website. And then you know, I'm sure, you know, everybody is just as, you know, excited as I am, you know, with Nancy's speech. So I want to just end with you know, a huge thank you to Nancy for sharing your experience, sharing your enthusiasm, and you can count on us to help you, and we all share that enthusiasm. This is for our, you know, for the benefit of ourselves and our children. So we should all work hard on this.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us tonight, Nancy. Thank you so much.
真的感谢，下次我们在 MOCA 再见 ，OK？
我们去 MOCA 再见，没问题，没问题。
这个好，一定会去。OK，
好，
拜拜，
谢谢大家。
在新的 MOCA 见哦。
新的 MOCA 旧的 MOCA 都可以。OK，
好，
加油，加油，
加油，拜拜，
加油，加油。
Okay, thanks everyone. So we can just disconnect meeting. Robert, I will just disconnect meeting.
I think someone wants to save the chat history. Can we save the?
I think I think the system itself is the same, but we just don't allow other people for privacy, for regular our coffee chat to save yourself.
Okay.
But for this event, I will see if our system on the back end save all the chat.
Yeah, someone asked me to save all the chats. Yeah, someone asked me to save all the text messages in the chat room. I don't think I can do it from my end. So if you can do it,
that's fine. I think we're gonna organize more this kind of events, and then everyone have any opinion can send to me. She's so passionate, you know. Even I'm tired or hungry. I've been working from 8 o'clock, and now I'm still listening. Anyway, but Robert, thank you very much to invite her. It's your guest, and it's great. Okay, and then so
过几个星期才 invite 这些 speaker.
推移你是什么？
不知道有人不知道有哪位朋友能够告诉我，就是说我怎么能够存这个 chat history？
对，这个我是问其他人知道，是你 host 这里你们是可以存这个chat information 的，但是你有一个 box 可能 check 或者 uncheck 的话，那么听众就可以 save 了。其实你们 CCC 的很多 information 在这上面，我们只能看一下，然后你打在上面的东西我们都没法 save。你要把这个全放下来，我们才可以 save， 要不然的话很多 information 你打在这里就一晃而过，没法 save。
所以 host 今天晚上的 host 那个 Alison， 你看你那边可不可以？
现在好像不是我在看啊，这个 setting 里面没有这个功能啊，要到外面的话
应该有的。应该有的，就所以你们 host 的话是你们是
应该是在外面，就是说你新的，如果我去改 setting 的话，是新的会议可能会上，但这个会议你打开，你进来以后是怎么样设